I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. MAGA Republicans placed numerous poison pills in the National Defense Authorization Act. You can't do anything bipartisan these days with these MAGA Republicans because they are just so obsessed with their culture wars, and they directed their culture war nonsense at our military. And so the National Defense Authorization Act, it comes up each year, usually passes both chambers of Congress on a bipartisan basis. This year it passed the committee 58-1, so a bipartisan vote there. Then it went to the broader House where members can add amendments. And all of the far right-wing MAGA Republicans added these ridiculous amendments. And some of them were struck down, like MAGA Republicans trying to remove the United States from NATO, or MAGA Republicans trying to take away all funding from Ukraine. But some of these other poison pills were ultimately voted on by the MAGA Republicans to be included in the National Defense Authorization Act, stuff that doesn't belong in there at all. And I'll give you an example. So it is Pentagon policy right now to fund expenses related to reproductive care. The Pentagon doesn't reimburse directly for an abortion, but it does for the incidental expenses of taking time off for work and related travel expenses. And so MAGA Republicans put in a provision in the National Defense Authorization Act attacking a woman's reproductive rights, a woman's right to control her body. That was voted into the National Defense Authorization Act by the MAGA Republicans. The MAGA Republicans also voted for no gender-affirming care within the armed forces. That was placed in the National Defense Authorization Act. So trans individuals who want to fight for our country cannot get the standard of care medical procedures that they may want to seek as an adult. Also placed into this National Defense Authorization Act is an elimination of any diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. That's one of the big things that MAGA Republicans attack, DEI, and they don't want any DEI programs in the military at all. It should be noted that almost 50% of the United States military is made up of minorities, and the minorities in the military state that the reason that they sometimes don't seek career advancement and promotion is because of the racism directed against them. So ultimately, DEI, in addition to just being the right thing to do, was also critical for troop readiness based on the composition of our military. So as I said, the National Defense Authorization Act got out of the committee in a 58-1 vote. The MAGA Republicans, though, then placed into the bill all of these culture war provisions, and ultimately Democrats voted against it. Nonetheless, the bill on kind of a strictly partisan basis, although there were a few Democrats who voted with the Republicans, like I think there was 4 Republicans who voted against it. But the bill passed by a very slim majority. It now goes to the Senate to be reconciled. And one of the things Kevin McCarthy did right away is normally you put your top members, your most educated members on these topics on the Senate Reconciliation Committee. And so Kevin McCarthy appointed Marjorie Taylor Greene to be one of the leaders from the House of Representatives on that reconciliation committee with the Senate. All of these issues of these poison pills that were put in by the MAGA Republicans, from attacking women's reproductive care, to attacking gender affirming care, to attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. All this stuff's going to be stripped out in the Senate. But then you're going to have a situation that may resemble what took place, remember, with the debt ceiling, where MAGA Republicans held our economy hostage over their absurd demands and almost crippled our economy. They're doing the same stuff with our your military right now, and it is, again, completely despicable. I want to show you what went down on the House floor before ultimately the vote was taken. First, I want to show you the types of things that the MAGA Republicans were saying on the House floor, and then I want to show you, and in committee, and then I want to show you what the Democrats were saying in some committees and on the House floor, and I want you to compare, and please put in the comments what you think about this. So first, this is MAGA Republican Congressmember Rosendale. Play this clip.
Weakening our military, it is not making it stronger. We have drag shows taking place at Malmstrom Air Force Base. There are 150 ICBM missiles that are being controlled by that Air Force Base and by these individuals. I don't want someone who doesn't know if they are a man or a woman with their hand on a missile button.
This is MAGA Republican Congressmember Anna Paulina Luna saying that there should remove any aid to women and children in Afghanistan. Play the clip.
Chairman, I couldn't help but pull out my pocket constitution, and I couldn't seem to find anywhere in here where it says we need to fund programs for humanitarian aid for women and children in Afghanistan. So with that, I just wanted to point that out, and I yield my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the text is not in the Constitution. It's in the bill.
Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene attacking Ukraine. Play the clip.
If our Department of Defense wants to defend America, we should be defending our border and not proclaiming our righteousness, talking about a war in Ukraine. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request an Advil and yield 1 minute to Representative Joe Wilson from South Carolina.
Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene attacking NATO. Play the clip.
Amendment number 6 directs the President to withdraw the U.S. from NATO. My amendment would direct the President withdrawal from NATO. They are not a reliable partner whose defense spending should be paid for by American citizens. For the better part of the last decade, Germany has contributed only around 1% of its GDP to finance NATO obligations, while the United States is paying around 4% of our GDP to defend NATO countries. The United States has been financing and promising to defend NATO countries for decades and paying more than its fair share. Western European countries could and should be stepping up their financial contributions to ensure the security of NATO. Instead, they are entirely beholden to Russia, and the U.S. taxpayer is expected to foot the bill. Amendment number 110 prohibits the provision of F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. My amendment would prohibit the U.S. from sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Providing F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine will not only deplete our own fighter fleet, but it will escalate the proxy war with Russia, which is a nuclear power, rather than implementing diplomatic solutions. Again, we should not be funding war. We should be pushing for peace. Amendment number 113 prohibits the provision of long-range missiles to Ukraine. My amendment prohibits the U.S. from sending long-range missiles to Ukraine.
Here's MAGA Republican Eli Crane just being horrifically racist. Play the clip.
Well, Mr. Chairman, though that was unbelievably inspiring, my amendment has nothing to do with whether or not colored people or black people or anybody can serve, okay? It has nothing to do with color of your skin, any of that stuff. What we want to preserve and maintain is the fact that our military does not become a social experiment. We want the best of the best. We want to have standards that guide who's in what unit, what they do. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, they are not doing this because they want the strongest military possible. I hope my colleagues on the other side can understand what we're doing. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker, it's going to be recognized to have the words colored people.
For what purposes generally seek recognition?
I'd like to be recognized to have the words colored people stricken from the record. I find it offensive and very inappropriate.
Is the gentlelady asking for unanimous consent to take down the words?
I am asking for unanimous consent to take down the words of referring to me or any of my colleagues as colored people.
For what purpose is the gentleman from Arizona?
Can I amend my comments to people of color?
The gentleman wishes to amend his comments. Is the gentleman asking consent?
Mr. Speaker, to have the word stricken. I didn't ask for an amendment.
Is there unanimous consent to have the word stricken? Without objection, so ordered.
Okay, now let me show you what the Democrats were saying. This is Democratic Congress member Jared Moskowitz during a committee hearing explaining this is something that got out of committee 58-1, and now MAGA Republicans want to put all of their culture war nonsense into a bill to fund our military. Play the clip.
So we're talking about the NDAA while this hearing's going on, supporting our defense, supporting our country, keeping our military superiority over China. It passed 58-1 in committee. Bipartisan, how it has always been and how it should be. Except now it's held hostage. It's held hostage over the culture war, right? It's not about defense. It's not about protecting the American people. No, it's about abortion or defending the Confederacy based on amendments that my colleagues have filed. Or it's about books again. We're back to books. Or it's about stopping mitigation to climate change. Anyone right now who's currently experiencing record flooding or record heat, they're not worried about defending the country. No, they're worried about stopping mitigation to climate change. The Senate's going to kick all this back to us. They're going to wipe all this culture war nonsense out. And so this is just theater. It's not about defending the country. They're holding up 250 nominees in the Senate to our military. My colleagues across the aisle are doing that. We can't appoint the head of the Marine Corps because of the culture wars. Hasn't happened since 1910. In October, when we're going to see the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff probably retire, nope, we won't be able to appoint that person either, based on this nonsense if it continues.
Here's Democratic Congressmember Takuda. Play the clip.
You know, it's been said once already on this floor, but I don't think it can be said enough. If we ever needed a reason to support DEI training, you need look no further than the debates, the antics that we have seen on this floor today, the childish, yes, actions that we have heard from the other side. In fact, from the backwards, racially insensitive comments spoken on this floor, it seems DEI training would be good right here in the halls of Congress. Chair, we have spent hours in markup already debating DEI, but apparently it wasn't enough. So here we are again, forced to debate yet another bad amendment. Never mind that 40% of our service members identify as members of minority groups, or that 42% of service members of color turn down assignments because of concerns about racism and discrimination that they have experienced. Never mind that almost half of all service members in a recent survey said they've been the subject of racial slurs or jokes in their communities. To say that we do not need DEI is to say racism and discrimination does not exist in our military and in our society. For the sponsor of this amendment to be proud of taking a meat cleaver to DEI flies in the face of all Americans and the diversity that we represent. What this reckless amendment and this obsession over DEI really exposes is a callous disregard for these service members and their experiences.
Time has expired.
They deserve better. America is better than this, and I strongly urge my colleagues to vote no.
Democratic member Horsford, play the clip.
Every day our military grows more diverse, more and more reflecting the diversity of our nation. This amendment does nothing to address the recruitment shortfalls that our services are facing, and instead it will only make it more difficult to recruit Americans on diverse backgrounds representing the true makeup of our nation. What are you so afraid of? Why do you keep bringing these divisive issues to the body of this floor? You are out of order. You are exhausting, Mr. Gates.
The gentleman is no longer recognized. The gentleman is no longer recognized.
Here is Democratic Congressman McGovern. Play the clip.
The party of single-issue bills wants to turn the NDAA into an anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ bill that weighs in on every wedge issue and culture war, from guns to border and beyond. Give me a break. If they want to do a single-issue bill, get this stuff out of here and pass a bipartisan NDAA bill. And by the way, I just want to say, I find some of the amendments that have been introduced to this NDAA incredibly offensive. We have members saying they want to get woke out of the military, but they can't even define woke. Was desegregating the military woke? Was allowing women in combat roles woke? Was repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell woke? That's what I want to ask some of my colleagues, and I'm pretty sure what their answer would be.
And here is Democratic Congressmember and Air Force veteran Chrissy Houlihan from Pennsylvania. Play the clip.
Well, let's talk about what's going on the House floor. This is a defense bill, which generally speaking is a bipartisan piece of legislation. Broadly speaking, as a veteran, how do you feel watching this bill bogged down by a lot of hot button cultural issues and it's being entangled in military issues?
And so not only am I a veteran, but I was actually born on an air station, a naval air station. So I've lived most of my life in service in one form or another. And you're right, historically, for more than 60 years, this particular piece of legislation has been, relatively speaking, bipartisan. And the idea now that we are bogging it down, so to speak, with all of these issues of the military and wokeness, so to speak, is enormously disappointing and very, very divisive. And it is a threat. Not only to the ability for us to secure, our country, but also it's a signal to our enemies that we are weakened. And that's something that none of us wants to see.
Look, I think those were very powerful responses and statements by the Democrats, and we just have to be very clear with our language. MAGA Republicans do not support our military anymore. They don't care about our economy. They are obsessed with their culture wars. They're focused on their Mr. Potato Head and bathrooms and Dr. Seuss and the green M&M or whatever Tucker used to talk about, or whatever the idiotic things that Fox talks about all of the time. This is what MAGA Republicans are obsessed with. And it is an affront to our democracy, and it is just so dangerous. I mean, you got the MAGA Republicans attacking the National Defense Authorization Act and thereby the United States military, the act from passage based on this conduct. We've got them calling for defunding the Department of Justice, the FBI, the Department of Defense, the IRS, the Department of Education. I mean, on and on and on is what they're calling for. I mean, in the Senate, I haven't even mentioned yet that you've got MAGA Republican, I did a whole video on it, but you've got MAGA Republican Tommy Tuberville placing a block on all promotions of military leaders from being confirmed in the Senate. It's the first time the Marines are without a commandant in over an actual appointed commandant in over 100 years. This is dangerous, dangerous stuff, and it's not a both sides issue. Just coming from the MAGA Republicans. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Wherever you get audio podcasts, subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. Have an excellent day.
Love this video? Then you'll love the MeidasTouch podcast. Listen as my brothers and I break down the latest news and chat with top political leaders on the fastest growing pro-democracy podcast in the world. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. Add the MeidasTouch podcast right now wherever you listen to your podcasts.